John McCain's family had a fairly somber announcement about the senator's ongoing battle with cancer. Here's a portion of that. Last summer, Senator John McCain shared with Americans the news our family already knew. He had been diagnosed with an aggressive glioblastoma, and the prognosis was serious. In the years since, John has surpassed expectations for his survival, but the progress of disease and the inexorable advance of age render their verdict. With his usual strength of will, he has now chosen to discontinue medical treatment. And if you haven't been following this, Mr. McCain has been undergoing treatment for that cancer since July of last year and has been absent from Washington since last December. Mr. McCain's family has apparently gathered in Arizona, and people close to him say that his death is imminent.
So this is a sad story in a lot of ways, obviously. But I've never seen this in an article before. In Vox, not Fox, Vox, they said when McCain dies, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, a Republican, will appoint a replacement to serve in the Senate until 2020. Now, it's true, we're all gonna die, so you could write in any article when Jake Huger dies, etc. But I've never seen that about a public figure before, so apparently it is obviously imminent. I know this, I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but I hope he can survive until Trump leaves office. That would be awesome. So I don't know what his situation is. I don't know if it's day to day, week to week, month to month. Obviously at this point, they've stopped treatment. And McCain is a complicated character. He is a very interesting part of American history and certainly part of my political lifetime. In fact, I just realized McCain is the very last Republican I ever voted for. I voted for him in the 2000 primaries and then switched over and voted for Gore against Bush in 2000 and haven't voted for a Republican since. And so a lot of people forget he did McCain-Feingold. He was actually for campaign finance reform. So that is an enormous positive for John McCain. Now, and he stood up to Trump at very important times. He even stood up to his own supporters when running against Barack Obama and refused to call him Muslim and said it's not right to say those things about him. And obviously the thing that everyone remembers about him, and should, with the notable exception of Donald Trump, that not only did he suffer torture at the hand of the North Vietnamese when he was captured, but to me the most heroic part of all was when they said, okay, we found out you're the son of a really important admiral in the US Navy, so we're gonna let you go. And he said, no, I will not leave unless you let all of us go. Now, that's the kind of bravery that is unparalleled. And for Donald Trump to say that I prefer people who don't get captured, when he got out of Vietnam with what he called a very strong letter about his bone spurs that are obviously non-existent, it was one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen in politics. But I don't want anybody to get me wrong. So you've got to be fair to John McCain and point out all those great attributes that I just talked about. On the other hand, man, he was a hawk, and he supported so many wars that proved to be completely disastrous. So at the end of the day, I did not agree with him politically, especially as he drove us towards the Iraq War, which was one of the worst mistakes in American foreign policy history, and in his later years seemed to be driving us towards the war with Iran, famously saying once, bomb, bomb, bomb Iran.
Singing it.
And singing it, that's right. So it is a mix. I don't know of a politician in this country that has a more mixed record than John McCain. A lot of people that have a terrible record, some that have a great record, but boy, McCain is as mixed as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, it's politically, there's that. And then personally, it's awful. There's a family right now preparing to lose and say goodbye forever to their dad, their grandpa, their husband. It's sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's worth acknowledging that John McCain kind of represents this old guard of Republicans that still had some integrity and hadn't totally sold out their values for, I don't know, racism and fear and hate, because a lot of what he did, when he stepped in at the last minute for healthcare, is admirable, and it's I think it's really telling to see what what a Republican does when they don't have to appeal to this kind of odd growing new Republican Party. And so I think it's worth acknowledging that, despite the fact that we don't necessarily agree with Republicans, and that's okay. I think he's one that we can respect in a way that we don't respect sort of this new brand of Republicanism.
I think that's exactly right, and I think Jules draws the exact right distinction, because the older Republicans, and now a lot of them are retired, John Danforth, who, and I disagreed with these guys. John Danforth brought us Clarence Thomas, but he is honest and he is a principled conservative. Alan Simpson, I disagree with him vehemently, and we've had fights on air about he wants to cut Social Security, but he is an honest man and he is principled. He also thinks money in politics is disastrous. Jim Leach from back in the day, et cetera. There was an old school Republicans that you disagreed with, but they were honest actors. The new Republicans are all supplied by donor money, grew up on donor money, and so they have no principles whatsoever. They'll do whatever their donors ask them to do. Now, again, that leads us back to McCain. He definitely has some principles, and some principles I disagreed with vehemently.
Yeah.
But we also have to acknowledge that he's a mix of old and new, because he also voted for every gigantic tax cut for the rich, every gigantic war, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
And then to agree with Brooke, look, when you think about it from a personal level, if it was your family member, how do you spend the last couple of days or weeks? I mean, that is just heartbreaking beyond measure.
Yeah, there was an HBO documentary about him, and obviously to some extent, I mean, they had access to him and his family. It's going to be
like
it's an
pro-him,
error on the
right.
side of pro him, but it's a lot of interviews with people, and he did really seem to be of an earlier sort of politician that, yes, they still are doing what their donors want, and yes, they still do horrible things. And in the area of war, that's just about, if you're going to be bad in an area of issues, that's just about the worst area that you can be on. But he did seem to actually, at least on some level, care about the concept of America and the concept of what our government was about. It led him to some terrible positions. But I agree with you. You can still, like, some people would hear you say he has integrity, and they'd say, no, here's a bad thing he did. He doesn't have integrity. Okay, some people, their brand doesn't involve shades of gray. It's all about, this guy's about to die. I can probably get a little bit of acclaim by dunking on him right now. I think that's largely pathetic. I will say in advance, I'm gonna do it when Donald Trump dies. So just prepare for that in a few years. But there are very few people that actually warrant that. Scalia might have been one. I think I tweeted a few things. But when it comes to John McCain, like, he stood up for refugees largely, far more than most other Republicans. As you said, some campaign finance reform. And he didn't seem to want to see the Republican Party become the party of white supremacy and Islamophobia and homophobia and all of that. And it's part of being a mixed bag. And everybody has flaws. Everyone in a position of power, literally the politicians you love most, have made horrible decisions in office. And those decisions, because they have power, are consequential for people's lives. So you cannot simply go through life saying, if I can identify a bad thing that someone has done, then I don't have to think critically about anything that they've done.
Yeah, so let me complete the hat trick and agree with all three of you. So guys, it is entirely possible to say that yes, he did oftentimes serve the donors, but at the same time, he actually believed in this country and still had principles. And for the new brand of politicians, it's sometimes hard to say those things.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes they don't have principles. All they have is service of the donors. But John McCain, I would argue, did a lot of terrible things and acted in ways that were not always principled, for sure. At the same time, he wanted to clean up our government. He wanted to get money out of politics. Those are incredibly laudable goals. And at the end of the day, it is near impossible to argue, no matter how much you might dislike his policies or even him, that he wasn't a patriot. Just about the only person who could argue that in the country is Donald Trump.
Have you heard about the new TYT audio network? We have some great new shows for you. Find us wherever you get your podcast by searching for TYT Network, or head over to tyt.com/audio.